We now move on to item 7, which is the land at Grange Farm, Foxhill Grange, Brixworth. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Jonathan Moore, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for land at Grange Farm, Foxhill Grange, Brixworth, construction of a detached dwelling with garage and outbuilding together, formation of access drive, hard and soft landscaping and associated works. The plan before you shows the site location plan. The site is located in open countryside, just outside the village of Brixworth, to the north of Pittsford Reservoir, the largest water body in the county. The application is to be assessed against paragraph 84E of the National Planning Policy Framework, which basically states that plan decisions should avoid the development of isolated homes in the countryside unless one or more of the following circumstances apply. Design is of exceptional quality in that it's truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more general in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting, be sensitive to defining characteristics of the local area. The next slide shows the context of the site taken from Google Images. Pittsford Reservoir located to the south. The land is farmland just to the north of the reservoir. The next plan shows the context again, Foxhill Grange, just to the northeast of the site. This shows the landscape master plan. There's various planting proposed as part of the proposal, including woodland planting, ornamental shrubbery, and various vegetation. This elevation shows the south-facing elevation, which is basically the elevation which faces Pittsford Water. Pittsford Water is part of a site of special scientific interest, which is a national designation for nature conservation. The proposal shows a variety of architectural styles. Materials are shown, uses innovative sustainable practices such as living green walls, solar panels, EV charging, geothermal energy, and uses a variety of materials including rusty ironstone walling, Asher stones, balconies, etc. But this elevation shows the north, which is obviously facing towards Holcott Road. This shows the east elevation as per the drawing in front of you, and this shows the west elevation. The floor plan in front of you shows the proposed ground floor plan. Ground floor plan includes 4 bedrooms, a study, games room, cinema room, gym, entertainment suite, lounge and kitchen. And the first floor plan includes master bedroom, kitchen, dining room, lounge and terrace. All the bedrooms will be en suite. This shows a sectional drawing through the site again, and this shows the roof plan. This is quite a useful image. It shows the photo montages of the south elevation facing towards the reservoir. Quite a useful image. It shows how the proposed dwelling will look. Again, another image looking down towards the reservoir will show the views over the Pittsford Reservoir. Again, another photo image. And this is basically taken from across opposite side of the reservoir looking towards the site. The site is depicted by the red arrow in the diagram. Again, taken from the other side of the reservoir, showing the site. You can pick up Grange Farm on the right-hand side of the diagram. Again, this is taken looking down towards the reservoir. This is taken looking towards the reservoir again, showing the outlook from the dwelling from the south elevation. And again, this shows the hedge line where the access road will be proposed. The access road will be proposed coming off Holcott Road and running in the north-south direction, leading to the house. The recommendation before you tonight is for a refusal, as we consider that it doesn't meet the high bar that's set down in the National Plan Policy Framework. I would point out it's an exceptionally high bar to meet, to be truly outstanding and exceptional quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee at this point? Yeah. Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to understand the distinction being drawn here by the officers. Given the application has gone through multiple revisions and has received support from the independent design review panel, would you explain specifically the qualities you consider are missing for it to reach truly outstanding threshold, please?
You are correct that it has been through an independent design review panel. However, obviously the design is subjective, and the view reached by our own internal specialist services team and design officers was that it didn't reach the high bar to be exceptional design. Now, we do acknowledge that parts of the design are of a good standard, such as innovative design practices, such as solar panels, EV charging points. However, we do consider, as outlined in the report, that the design is very box-like, quite blocky, and really doesn't meet the bars set in the NPPF to be exceptionally good, to be justified to recommend it for approval. In addition, we also consider that the impact of the landscape setting would be detrimental to the area in terms of it would result in an incongruous form of development. The area is surrounded by very attractive farmland, agriculture, and open countryside where local vernacular prevails. This would result in a very modern, modernist design that would jar the countryside, and we feel it doesn't meet the standards set down by the NPPF.
Any further questions?
Thank you. It is substantial, but the position is below the skyline. And I think it sits quite well. So I was just asking why and it's below the skyline and it's aligned with the landform. So I'm trying to get why you're saying it's
Through you,
not.
Chairman, I think that's a matter for you as members to debate. The officer report sets out quite clearly the assessment. There's no argument that the applicants have engaged, but we feel after quite a lengthy time of engagement, we don't feel that it's actually achieved that bar, and that is set out in the report and the consultation responses that you've had from your specialist services team, which comprises heritage, comprises design, comprises ecology and landscape as well. So members who've chosen to attend the site visit will have seen the site in its landscape, and there's two aspects to paragraph 84. One is achieving the design, being truly exceptional. The other is it's not an either or, it's an and. Does it significantly enhance the landscape setting? And that's the tests that we feel as officers that it hasn't quite achieved. But members are entitled to come to a different view when you come to debate it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Breeze.
Thank you. Do you have an image of how the house sits in the landscape from a distance, perhaps from Pittsford? Or I know you showed us a couple of photos, but a sort of mock-up of how it fits in this very special landscape.
Sorry, Eamon. That's the view of the south elevation, which obviously faces towards the reservoir. So obviously that's the principal elevation of the building, as you can see. So that's the elevation you would see if you're standing notice the side of the reservoir from, say, for example, from Pittsford Dam, looking across the reservoir. That's kind of the main facade that you would see from a distance, from long distance views.
Okay, so there isn't one I think that one's taken from the garden, which is a quite different view. But
That's
it's
right, yes,
quite
from the garden,
interesting
yeah.
to see what it would perhaps be like from the other side of the.
That's taken from the opposite side of the reservoir there, looking from a long distance across the site.
Yeah, that's just the site though, not with a. Okay, there isn't one in the pack that we could.
There's nothing more in the presentation other than you've seen tonight.
No, I mean on the website.
On the planning portal, there's a 243-page
But
which has all the concept photos in there.
But that's what that's what I'd like to see on the screen
Yeah.
rather than
If that's something we can bring up at all.
having to wade through.
No, okay, no, it's not available, I'm afraid. Okay, are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, we will now move on to public speaking in the following order. So we have a written statement from Brixworth Parish Council.
Thank you, Chair. I will now read the statement submitted on behalf of Brixworth Parish Council. Dear Chair and members of the committee, representatives from Brixworth Parish Council are unable to attend today's meeting, but wish to record its position regarding the above application. Parish Council does not support this application. Our Planning Committee considered the proposal carefully at its meeting in September 2024 and resolved unanimously that the application fails to meet the criteria of paragraph 84E of the National Planning Policy Framework. Specifically, the committee concluded that design does not significantly enhance its immediate setting and is not sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. These concerns were reaffirmed at our most recent meeting on the 1st of June 2026, where members noted that the independent design review experts also found the proposal did not meet the design standards required under paragraph 84E. The Parish Council therefore maintains its previous position that the proposal falls short of the exceptionally high bar set for isolated dwellings in the countryside. The design is considered overly dominant and discordant in its rural context and does not reflect the highest standards of architecture or contribute positively to the local landscape. For these reasons, Brixworth Parish Council respectfully asks the committee to refuse the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation. And that concludes the statement of Brixworth Parish Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now have a written statement from Councillor Jonathan Harris, who's the local ward member.
Thank you, Chair, and I will now read that statement in turn. And so begins the statement. Dear Chair, members of the committee, apologies that I can't be at this committee meeting in person due to a long-standing commitment this evening. I called this application in on behalf of Brixworth Parish Council following their request for me to do so at one of their planning committee meetings. I would firstly like to thank the officer for the detailed and comprehensive report and would urge committee members to align with the officer's report and refuse this application. As noted within the report, the key issues arising from the application details are principle of development, specifically if the proposal meets the tests under paragraph 84E of the NPPF, impact on amenity, highways, access and parking, biodiversity and landscape, and flooding and drainage. It should be noted that the location of this site is extremely close to the site of special scientific interest. Brixworth Parish Council undertook, with the support of West Northamptonshire Council, a local housing needs assessment for the parish in 2024, which concluded that local need for 31 affordable homes was there. This particular proposal does nothing to support this particular local need. Furthermore, the existing Brixworth Neighbourhood Development Plan 2016, amended 2021 and spanning until spring 2029, states the following. Development will only be permitted in the open countryside if it 1. Contributes to the local rural economy, 2. Is for the reuse or extension of an existing building, 3. Is a sport or recreation, 4. Is for an isolated dwelling in the special circumstances identified in paragraph 79 of the 2019 National Planning Policy Framework, now of course updated by the 2024 NPPF as paragraph 84E. In reviewing this application, I particularly urge committee members to take note of the key paragraphs of the officer's report. 7.31.1, 7.31.2, 7.33 and 7.42. They can be found on pages 50 to 52 of the committee papers. The building design does not conclusively demonstrate a sensitive to or respond to positively to the defining characteristics of the local area. The scheme would represent a substantial change to the character and appearance of the application site, but would not significantly enhance its immediate setting, whilst impacting on views in and out of the area in the wider rural setting. The proposal fails to meet the two strands of paragraph 84E, and the site therefore is not considered to be a suitable location for new residential development, having regard to the development plan and whether or not the proposal constitutes an individual dwelling of exceptional quality. The officer clearly sets out in paragraph 7.43 of his report the relevant planning policies that must be considered. H1, BN9, policy R1 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, policies H08 and ENV10 of the Daventry District Settlements and Countryside Part 2 Local Plan, policy RA6 of the same plan, and policy 2 of the Development Plan, Neighbourhood Development Plan, which contains provisions to protect the amenity of future occupiers of the development and neighbouring properties. Chapter 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, Achieving Well-Designed Place, states the design is of exceptional quality in that it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. It is worth noting that albeit each and every application should be considered on its own merits, another paragraph 84 application recently failed to obtain permission as a result of failing Part E of the NPPF paragraph 84. This area around Pittsford Reservoir is a particular hotspot for paragraph 84 applications, and it is crucial that all applications pass subsection E of the NPPF, which states the design is only of exceptional quality if it is truly outstanding, reflecting the highest standards in architecture, and would help to raise the standards of design more generally in rural areas, and would significantly enhance its immediate setting and be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. In order to, quote, significantly enhance its immediate setting, the design would need to be designed to add or to complement the local landscape and would not have significant impact on the surrounding area. This design does not complement the local landscape and would have a negative impact on the surrounding area. For a design to be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area, the design should respond to the character and context of the local area, with cues taken from local building styles and reinterpreting them, or from local systems of construction, and respond sensitively to the site's topography and geology, and make references to the site's history. This design does none of those things. In summary, myself, Brixworth Parish Council and officers have arrived at the same overall conclusion, that being the proposal is unacceptable for the single reason set out by the officer as stated in the report. Thank you for listening to my comments on this application, and I ask that members follow officer's advice and refuse this application. And that concludes the statement of Councillor John Harris, Ward Member for Brixworth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to Kevin Brown, who's an architect on behalf of the applicants. If you press the button on the microphone, it should come on.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Yes, I'm the architect for the scheme. I've had a lot of experience of...
Can you just move the microphone a little bit closer, sorry.
Is that better? Yeah. Of paragraph 84s all over the country. Personally, I've got something like 20 odd approvals through. So I'm well versed in what's required for paragraph 84E. Why are the defining characteristics which have been mentioned here so important? You'll have seen from your site visit the other day when you went onto site, a landscape that has been mentioned here that looks very attractive, meadows which are leading down towards the water, but it isn't the Lake District. This lake that we all talk about and we all see was actually only that created in the 1950s by the insertion of a huge dam and a huge engineering works that created the landscape you see around you. So it's actually only been there for a very short time. And the lake itself, of course, isn't a lake, it's a reservoir for supplying water to the local area. And around the lake, there is a margin of roughly 30-metre margin all the way around the lake, which excludes properties or anybody from accessing directly onto the lake itself. Prior to the dam, the landscape wasn't just a valley that was flooded. It also, too, during the Industrial Revolution from the 17th, 18th century onwards, was a landscape of quarries. In fact, the land which the client owns had a quarry on it, virtually where the site sits. And there were railways, there were wagonways, and the remnants of those are still evident in the landscape. So we don't see a landscape that's historic in any respect here. It's entirely man-made, it's created. The field patterns which we see, of course, have all been altered over time, and many of the fields have been substantially enlarged and feed now down towards the reservoir. One of the problems of the agricultural farming that goes on around the reservoir has emerged from the discussions we've had with Anglian Water, is that a lot of the pollutants from the fields run down into the reservoir. This scheme, by putting a building here and doing work to the two fields either side, will actually capture the pollutants that come down from the fields beyond and prevent them from going to the reservoir, putting reed beds and managing the water. So it's much larger than just a building that we're doing here. It's actually a very holistic approach to the whole site and the farm itself. The defining characteristics are a key part, obviously, of paragraph 84E. And together with the other clauses of paragraph 84E, the building directly does reflect the defining characteristics that I've just spoken of. The villages of Pittsford and Brixworth are both defined by ironstone buildings with large walls which run through the villages, as you all know from the historic centres of villages. And these large ironstone walls we've managed to use in this building to create the base of the building. It's the plinth of the building. It grounds it. It allows it to tie it to the earth. Above that, the larger modernist elements directly reflect the industrial heritage of the area. The industrial heritage and the reservoir itself, the brutalist elements, as has been mentioned, which created the reservoir buildings. Many of the reservoir buildings are 1950s, 1960s buildings, and they reflect modernism. So you have a direct marriage between the historic elements, which are the wall, the reference to the local area, and above them sitting these modernist elements. And it's clearly an element which has then gone on to define the characteristic building. So the building is directly grown from this site. This building couldn't be transposed and booked in anywhere else. It only exists here, on that one site. Obviously, we have substantially engaged with the design and review panel throughout for about an 18-month, nearly 2-year process. And we met the panel on 3 separate occasions. We've engaged with them for many hours and many days, in fact. Whereas with the officers themselves, we've only actually had 1 meeting with the design officer. And the panel itself is made up, as you...
Can you conclude your statements, please?
Sorry?
Can you conclude your statements, please?
Continue.
Conclude.
Yes. The panel itself is made up of a group of professionals. There's 6 that sit on the panel at the moment that looked at this scheme throughout those 3 review processes and allowed the scheme to evolve in accordance with what the requirements were. So the panel did consider directly that it met the requirements of NPPF, paragraph 84E.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just remain seated for a moment. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor McMurtry?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think you've done a pretty good job at finding how you think it's sensitive to the defining characteristics of the local area. I'd like to hear sort of your opinions on how you think it would significantly enhance the immediate setting and also what makes it truly outstanding as to, comply with, 84E of the LPPF, sorry.
Yes. In terms of what makes it truly outstanding, well, in order to satisfy the defining characteristics, that normally is a direct relationship to something that's truly outstanding. An outstanding architectural piece or an outstanding piece will reflect the defining characteristics of the area from which it comes, and it directly does. the I mean, I'm the architect, so obviously I've got a relationship with the scheme. But we present the scheme as a team. I mean, we've got landscape architect, we've got sustainability consultants, horticulturalists, so a whole series of people and ecologists that have looked at this scheme in detail. So I have to satisfy a group of other professionals that the scheme met the criteria of paragraph 84E. And we managed to do that. I have had schemes where that we haven't done that, so it's not a shoe-in that you get an approval. You actually really have to work hard to get the piece of paper, a letter that panel will issue at the end of that process. So I consider it obviously it's truly outstanding, and the panel considered it that it was truly outstanding. And to be sensitive to defining characteristics, again, yes. What was the other part?
Sorry.
Right. Yes, in terms of the immediate setting, but it doesn't just have to enhance in architectural terms. It can be allowed to enhance in other terms. So we're improving the biodiversity by substantially. We're also, as I mentioned, we're controlling the water runoff from the farmland. So we're enhancing the setting. Again, by doing that, we're improving ecology and sustainability, bird life, insect, all of that. So it's a very broad tablet that you're trying to do. It's not just an architectural piece, that you're presenting here a scheme that's very, very diverse.
Yeah, but do you think visibly as well it enhances the area? And
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think it does that simply because it meets those defining characteristics. It's a building of its time, and it will become in future years one of the listed buildings in the area. I'm sure. Many do. Many of these paragraph 84Es do. I mean, they are rare things throughout over the country, and the panel that we've used reviews schemes over the whole country, not just the local Midlands area. We've done them all the way from the Scottish borders down to the southwest, and the panel handle all of them. So that diverse knowledge allows them to assess the scheme and ensure that it meets the criteria.
Okay, well, thank you.
Any further questions, Daniel? Councillor Rainbird, sorry.
Yep.
What engagement have you had with the parish council, Brixworth Parish Council?
Ourselves, we haven't directly spoken to the council themselves. We don't normally for a scheme when we present a scheme. We'd normally allow that to come through the offices. Sometimes officers are invited along to design panel meetings, but it's obviously they're long meetings. They take a whole day. The first meeting we have with the panel takes a whole day, so they really know the site. They really understand it. And that first meeting is a long day, so we hardly ever get a planning officer who can't afford to commit their time to come along to the meetings, and it didn't happen in this case. But it has happened on others, and we welcome that if they come along.
Would you have not seen it as beneficial to contact parish council yourselves, as it does contradict the neighbourhood development plan?
It's not something we would normally do because, of course, the planning.
One moment, just we'll get another microphone. Two spare ones there. Those two.
Yes. As I say, the consultation process for a paragraph 84A normally comes through the planning authority itself, and there was no requirement made by the planners themselves, the officers, to go and engage with the parish council itself. We're not normally invited along parish council meetings anyway. I've only ever done it, I think, out of all the schemes that I've done, once. It's very rare.
Cheers, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Councillor Beryl?
Thank you, Chair. I actually attended the site visit, and the land does undulate.
Yes.
Wow. So I understand why you've tucked it in. But one of my questions is, during the panel reviews, was WNC involved? Were the officers involved at all? Did they attend, or is it with WNC?
We had one meeting with the planning officer on site. On one day, we walked to the site with him from the adjacent Grange Farm, which the client also owns, and that was it.
Thank you.
So it's a very brief discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We now have Stephen Whale, who's the agent for the applicants.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, officers. So I'm a barrister by profession, speaking on behalf of the applicant. And everyone agrees that paragraph 84E is the key policy in this case, and that planning permission should be granted if you're satisfied that the design is of exceptional quality. Obviously, as the saying goes, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And the same could be said for design. There's obviously a subjective element to design. But it's not a purely subjective matter. There are experts in design, just as there are experts in law and medicine, accountancy, many other walks of life. And the government's national planning policy recognises this. I'm just going to touch on a couple of paragraphs of the NPPF. So paragraph 138 says that councils such as yours should have regard to the outcome of the processes for assessing and improving the design of development, and I quote, including any recommendations made by design review panels. And the next paragraph, 139, says that significant weight should be given to outstanding or innovative designs, and you've already heard from officers about the innovative aspects of this design. And if I may say so, Councillor Furman was bang on the point right at the outset when he mentioned that this application has been through precisely the kind of design assessment that national policy envisages. I'm talking about the DRP, of course. It's not just any old panel. It's nationwide. It's reviewed projects from over 150 council areas. And this council is familiar with the DRP. Last year, this council approved a proposal in Naseby that had been assessed by the DRP, which is independent and impartial and expert. And as I say, and as I'm sure you know, which assessed this application not just once, not twice, but 3 times. And the panel members visited and they provided their feedback. And they concluded ultimately that the paragraph 84E tests are met, and they put that in writing, and they followed that up with another letter in writing last week. And as Mr. Brown mentioned, there were no less than 6 people on the DRP panel. A town planner of some 30 years' experience, works for another local authority, 3 highly qualified architects, 2 highly qualified landscape architects, and I tried to put together cumulative years of experience, and it's frankly decades and decades and decades. And as mentioned, they're a mix of people. We've got local authority members on the panel. We've got people in private practice. They're all volunteers. There's no financial conflict of interest. And as Mr. Brown mentioned, sometimes they approve schemes, sometimes they don't. They looked at this very, very rigorously indeed. And applying the NPPF, I would urge you, I go back to what Councillor Furman said at the outset, I would urge you to have regard to the independent DRP conclusion and give significant weight to it. As you know, the DRP is not alone in its conclusion. There's a whole team of consultants supporting the applicant who share the DRP's conclusion. The two neighbours have written in. They share the DRP conclusion. Notably, no neighbour has written in to say that they oppose. I'll just come back to the parish council, which has been touched on. I'm afraid to say their position is somewhat muddled. The statement that was read out earlier this evening includes this passage. The parish council say the independent design review experts found the proposal did not meet the design standards required under paragraph 84E. I'm afraid they're just simply wrong. They couldn't be more wrong. The DRP found the exact opposite. They found that it did meet the paragraph 84E test. So just bear that in mind, please, when you are thinking about what the parish council had to say. I come back to where I started, I suppose, and that is that government policy in the NPPF tells you to have regard to precisely the kind of process that this has been through, the rigorous process, the DRP's conclusion, and I'd urge you to share that conclusion and to grant approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you,
any
members.
questions from the committee? Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. When, beg my pardon, when members are assessing this application, how much weight do you think we should give to the DRP conclusion that paragraph 84 has been met?
I think you should give it significant weight, really for two reasons. Firstly, national policy says that you're to have regard to precisely this kind of process. That's the first point, or the first reason. And secondly, because of the nature of the DRP panel. 6 in number, independent, impartial, as I mentioned before, decades and decades of expertise on precisely this kind of matter. So I would say significant weight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? No. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point, are there any points you wish to come back on?
I would just come back on a point raised by Mr. Whale. Paragraph 138 of the NPPF states that the LPA should have regard to the design review panel, does not say that the council should or are obliged to agree with the design review panel. I take on your point regarding the issue of the experience and number of people involved. However, the council also have their own design experts and also the specialist services team who have considerable experience at the same time.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move to the committee to now debate the item. We'll start with Councillor McMurtry.
Yeah, I'd just like to seek officer's opinion on, if we were to follow the advice and reject this, do you think this is going to hold up at appeal if it's been independently, sort of approved by people with lots of experience in architecture and things like that? That's what I'm wondering about.
Chairman, that's the $60 million question. I mean, you've got experts on either side, experts employed by the council to assess the application. We provided our advice. We've heard from experts this evening to say that you should give significant weight to the findings of the DRP. That's all part of the balance. Officers have had regard to the submissions and drawn a different conclusion. You're entitled to go against that, but as to whether or not it will succeed in appeal, that's a matter then for the planning inspector.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I've taken on board the comments made by the speakers and recognise the points that they've made in terms of the architectural side of things. However, I do feel the points made in the report from the officer's point of view, in that actually the predominant buildings that are present at this site currently tend to be the 19th century style rather than the more brutalish style that's proposed here. I think the other element, we've heard about two neighbours, but I think it's important to remember that Pittsford is a site not just of scientific interest, but a hugely key part of the well-being of residents of Northampton and the wider West Northampton area. So in a way, there's a huge number of stakeholders who use Pittsford as a means of well-being, as an access to well-being, as an access to really valuable countryside, and the experience of being able to access countryside and the sense. I recognise what's been said about the history of the site. However, I think for most people now, what it represents is a place of nature and connection to nature and well-being, and that is also part of the history of the way in which reservoirs, when they were created with one purpose of providing water, also took on these hugely significant elements of well-being and connection to well-being for members of the local area, and often for people who live in areas that are not so much that aren't the countryside, who live in very urban areas. Places like Pittsford are their access to countryside and to nature and to connection, and I think it's really important that how they experience it and the impact that potentially quite a more brutalist style of property might have on the way that they experience that area is significant. And I do think that Councillor Harris's points around what happens if that bar is allowed to shift at all, or if there's any concern that it might not meet that really high bar, what it means in terms of what might happen with other sites in the area and other potential properties. So for those reasons, I would be inclined to support the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Councillor Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I keep looking at this paragraph 84E. Is it truly outstanding? Reflect the highest standards of architecture, raise the standards of design. And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the pictures. I've heard the explanation of how it will fit together, drawn from the local setting for the second part of it, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that it absolutely does, in my opinion. And I'm looking at policy RA6, and it says, point 3 is individual dwellings of exceptional quality or innovative design. Well, it looks exceptional quality to me. The innovative mixing of the three architectural styles with reflection of local buildings in the area, I think it does meet that. So I'm struggling to see how it shouldn't be approved. I mean, when we were at the site visit, you could see where it was set. It's probably not going to be visible directly from a lot of the area. I've been around Pittsford many times, and the way it fits in, the way it's broken up with the living green walls and the other landscape architecture that's on the plans to put in place there. It looks a fantastic design, and I can't see where you would put that building in, and it wouldn't enhance the area, it wouldn't improve it, be an impact on it. As far as I can see, I think it would significantly enhance immediate setting wherever you put that, and I think certainly there with the different local architecture styles and the enhanced B&G. So I would be leaning towards the other way and approving it.
Councillor Rainbird, then Councillor Verrill.
I'd just like to say that obviously paragraph 84E of the MPVF is the main deciding factor on this application, and I'd just like to say it's very subjective, a very subjective paragraph, open to anyone's eye view, like the agent of the applicant said. it's in the eye of the beholder. But I can't see it meeting paragraph 84E. It also goes against the neighbourhood development plan. Obviously, I've heard no one mention that. So yeah, I'm inclined to go with officer's recommendation and refuse this application.
Councillor Beryl.
Thank you, Chair. What I think is really important on these applications is actually attending these site visits. No one likes these Article 84 applications, in my opinion. But after the site visit, the land undulates quite well. It is tucked in, so half of the building is actually built within. And as long as we can somehow condition it in terms of making sure that they hit all the criteria of the screening as per drawing, I also don't see or have a problem with this application committee. Thank you.
Councillor Murtry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of leaning towards that end of the spectrum as well. I mean, you know, I think it's purposely written as subjective, so things like this can be debated. But you know, to me, it does look outstanding. I kind of agree with Councillor Cartwright and Beryl. So yeah, I'm leaning more to going against officer's recommendation. Personally.
Okay, so does anyone wish? Do you wish to?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
Councillor
you.
Breeze.
I have found the viewpoint that I asked about. I'm looking at it now, and it's certainly outstanding in that it stands out. But having been involved in various Section 84 applications over the years, it doesn't hit me as being an outstanding building such as we've had in Northamptonshire, South Hampshire in the past. So I have to say, having read the officer's report and particularly of the conservation officers and others, I'm tending to go with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Rainbow.
If no one else has anything more to say, I'd like to move to a proposal. I would go with officer's recommendation for refusal.
Okay, you're going to second that. Councillor Smith as a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. It's proposed by Councillor Rainbird and seconded by Councillor Smith that the application be refused in accordance with the recommendation for the refusal reasons as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I see all those in favour of the proposal? And those against? Okay, so that's yeah. Okay, do we have an alternative proposal from the committee? Councillor Rainbird, Beryl, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I propose we go against officer's recommendation and approve this application.
Okay, do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Furman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For a proposal to approve, contrary to the case officer's recommendation, it would be a two-part resolution. Firstly, that the committee delegates authority to the Director of Planning to grant permission to the development, and that we also grant delegated authority to officers to agree a set of conditions to facilitate the delivery of the development. Are you happy with that summary?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As long as they adhere to the screening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I see a show of hands in favour of the proposal by Councillor Beryl, please? Those against? And any abstentions? No. That's been approved.